I will not make any deals with you. I've resigned. I will not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, briefed, debriefed, or numbered. My life is my own.
Welcome back to the Captain Mike Show. Kind of left you guys in a cliffhanger in, I believe it was episode 6. So now we're in episode 7 of the book of Daniel. For those of you joining me for the first time, go back and watch all the previous 6 videos to pick us up. But we're in Daniel chapter 9, towards the end, verse 26. And we're just talking about the 70-week prophecy of about the end time events, the captivity ending from Babylon to when they go back to build up Jerusalem and Nehemiah, Ezra's time. But so let's get right back into it. And we're going to kind of get into this a little bit more, describing what I just read. And so let's pick up where I left off last time. I'll just repeat a little bit in verse 25. Now therefore, and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem. Now what that means is there's a commandment for Nehemiah in Ezra's time period to go back and build. The 70 years is over, and they're released by the Medo-Persian Empire to go back into Jerusalem, Israel, go back into that land and travel all that way from Babylon back there. And they're welcome to take as many people as they want. And at that time, Nehemiah had a lot of favor with the king and with the queen at that time. And they were released to go back, and they even had financial support. God was really working miraculously in that whole situation. But the key thing for our study today is that's when the beginning of the 70 weeks starts. So that 70-week prophecy begins when they're released to go back in the end of the 70 years of Babylonian captivity. They're released to go back into Israel, Jerusalem in particular, and rebuild the wall, rebuild the temple there during that period. And that is the beginning of what we're concerned about, Bible prophecy from that point all the way forward to beyond where we're at right now. So keep reading in verse 25. To restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. So that's really only 69 weeks, because we're actually currently in the 7th week. The 7th week is a very long pause since basically Jesus's period to where we are now, and we'll get into that a little more. But that's what's going on here. So don't let that confuse you. 69 weeks is up to the period of Jesus' crucifixion, basically. Okay, and then verse 26, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, that's 62 weeks, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall, okay, so let's stop right there. I'm not going to explain the discrepancy between 62 and 69. Know that Bible scholars say it's actually another way of saying the same thing. They just call that the last 7 days or 7-day period 1 week, and that adds up to 69. It's just a different way of saying that. I'm not going to get into all the arguments about that. Just focus on the 69 weeks. Okay, so in this, he says, in the middle of verse 26, the people, the prince that shall come, shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Now what that's talking about is not the destruction of anything during the period where Nehemiah and Ezra are rebuilding a wall, which is like 600 BC type of period. This is actually referring to 70 AD, which is what Jesus prophesied in Matthew 24 and in Luke chapter 21, where that the existing temple of that day would be destroyed. That was Herod's temple, and all of Israel would go and be destroyed because of the rebellion. And Titus would send in one of the major Roman legions and just level Jerusalem. And so, and then that's what he's talking about here when it says, the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. Unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. Now, wow, there's a lot to kind of explain, even in half a verse here. So bear with me, and God give me grace to explain this to people clearly. There is a ton happening in verse 26 and 27 here. You have the description of the 70 AD 70 when Titus came in with one of his major armies and flattened Israel, as Jesus warned him about. And I think like 1 million Jews perished in that battle, just so you know. And the whole place, Herod's beautiful, amazing temple that took 40-some years to build, was literally leveled. And it's never been rebuilt since. And then, there's been a lot of different wars there and kingdoms that have come in after it. But so that's an amazing thing. And it does speak of an evil situation there. And it right there quickly, it does flip forward rapidly into the present time of the Antichrist. The Antichrist is discussed here. And this is the famous Daniel and Bible prophecy 9:27. This is the famous Daniel 9:27 that many prophecy scholars pivot and focus on as the beginning of the 7-year tribulation, when the Antichrist comes into power, sneaks into power, makes a deal with probably that 10-region governmental system that we've talked about. And so I just want to make sure you guys are clear on that in verse 27, this is most likely, now not everybody ascribes to this, but myself and other scholars agree that verse 9:27 does describe the Antichrist starting to rise at the end of time, beyond where we're at right now. And he shall confirm, I'll read it again, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. That would be the 7-year tribulation. Now we're talking about 1 week, not like 50-year week. Like 7 times 7 is 49 years. Like you can do that in Bible prophecy. I'm sorry to tell you. You got to know who's talking about what time. It just takes a little learning to understand that. That explains what I've talked in earlier lessons, which is worth repeating, where prophets of the Old Testament would speak of things that was happening right then, and then they would speak of things that was going to happen in, say, 50 years from when they were talking, and they would at the same verse be saying that there's something going to happen in 700 years ahead. So that kind of thing can happen in Old Testament prophets. You have to be careful to know what the prophet is really speaking about. It helps you with really getting clarity when you understand it. Okay, in the midst of the week, okay, let's read it over. And he shall, verse 27, 9:27, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured out upon the desolate, and even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. I know that's a lot of complicated words, but basically what's happening is that the Antichrist will make a league or some kind of a contract with certain powers that be in the world for a week, for 7 years. For 7 years. And in that 7 years, in the midst of the week, which would be halfway through the tribulation period, he will decide to break that agreement, and that because he wants to become the world-dominating ruler, and he doesn't want to share his power with anybody else. And then that's where he comes in, and he causes the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abomination he shall make it desolate, which is the desolation of abomination, which Jesus talks about in Matthew 24, verse 15. Even Jesus gives great credit to Daniel. Not only he does it in a couple, but he gives great credit to Daniel, that Daniel was hearing about the Antichrist even way back 600 years or so before Jesus appeared on the scene. And Jesus refers to this very verse in Matthew, look it up, Matthew 24, verse 15, Jesus said to his disciples when he's telling them about the end time unfolding of things, he says, remember what Daniel said back in his books, that when the abomination of desolation sits where it ought not, that's where he says, watch out, flee to the hills, don't come down from your rooftops, just get out of town, basically, because that's when the Antichrist will come in and sit on the altar or sacrifice or take over the Jewish temple or tabernacle, whatever's erected at that time, and make himself out to be God. And that's when he shows his true hand, and that's what will be at his military peak. That's what will be at his influential peak. And that's what happens in that period. And then oblation to cease, verse 27, even until the consummation, and the determined shall be poured out upon the desolate. So it even speaks in this last verse in there, last few words in there, I believe about ultimately when Jesus comes back and destroys the Antichrist and sets up the ultimate millennial reign, the 1,000-year reign, and puts this authority underneath him, and destroys the Antichrist. And locks him up for 1,000 years. But I think that's a good place to stop. That's where the book of Daniel ends. Man, so in review, it just starts out with Daniel supplicating, repenting for the sins of the people, because he realizes by reading the book of Jeremiah that the 70 years of captivity has ended in Babylon. It's now time to go back, very close to time to go back to Israel to rebuild the wall, to rebuild Jerusalem. So he repents for the sins of the people. Angel Gabriel shows up, says, you're dearly beloved, Daniel, you've been hearing this, and then there's going to be 70 weeks from when that decree to go rebuild Jerusalem begins to 69 weeks where Jesus will be cut off, and then there's a full week, a big giant pause of 2,000 years for the last 70 week of Daniel, before the Antichrist shows up for those last 7 years of the tribulation. So it's amazing that God has paused at the end of the 69 week to give grace and mercy and the New Testament preaching to reach as many of the lost as possible, to preach salvation to the ends of the earth before the 7-year tribulation kicks in gear, and which will end the 70 week. You know, it'll begin the 70th week and it'll end the 70 week in 7-year period. So wow, that is amazing. There's a lot of ground covered in there, and that even covers I think, and others think too, not just me, that he actually even speaks right up to the very end there, when Jesus comes back. So with that said, we have actually time to dive into chapter 10. So I'm just going to try to crank really quick into chapter 10, which is another key part of prophecy. And so let's dive into it. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, we're in Daniel chapter 10, of Persia, a thing was revealed unto Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar. And the thing was true, but the time appointed was long, and the understanding the thing, and the understanding of the vision. In those days I, Daniel, was mourning 3 full weeks. I ate no pleasant bread, neither came flesh nor wine in my mouth, neither did I anoint myself at all, till 3 whole weeks were fulfilled. And in the 4th and 20th day of the 1st month, I was by the side of the great river which is in Hiddekel. Then I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a certain man clothed in linen, whose loins was girded with fine gold of Uphaz. His body also was like the beryl, and his face the appearance of lightning, his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and feet like colors to be polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men that were with me saw not the vision, but a great quaking fell upon them, so that they fled to hide themselves. Therefore I was left alone and saw this great vision, and there remained no strength in me, for my comeliness was turned in me into corruption, and I retained no strength. So Daniel there's a mighty vision has been given to him. He's seeing like a similitude of a pre-incarnate Christ, or the angel of the Lord has appeared to him, and there's so much power there. It's even caused the heathen to just shake with fear, and just they fled to hide themselves. And just so it's pretty amazing when the power of God shows up. It gets everybody's attention. Now we go on here, and I'm not going to read every voice, but everything here. But this man, or this angel, touches Daniel and gives him strength to get up on his feet so that he can hear and receive what God has for him. And he ultimately ends up on his palm of his hands, kind of like if you're on your knees and your palm of your hands. It's the strength that he's been given. And he said unto me, O Daniel, man greatly beloved, again, greatly loved, understand the words that I speak unto thee, and stand upright. For unto thee I am now sent. And when he had spoken these words unto me, I stood trembling. So he finally is able to get up to his feet and hear this. Then he said to him, But fear not, Daniel, for this from the first day that thou didst set thine heart to understand, and to chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I came for thy words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. Now I came to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days, for yet the vision is for many days. And when he had spoken such words unto me, I set my face towards the ground and became dumb. And behold, one like the similitude of the Son of Man touched my lips. Then I opened my mouth and spake, and he said unto me that stood before me, O my Lord, by the vision my sorrows are turned upon me, and I have retained no strength. For how can the servant of this my Lord talk with this my Lord? For as for me, straightway there remained no strength in me, neither is there breath left in me. Then there came again and touched me one like appearance of man, and he strengthened me, and said, O man, greatly beloved, fear not. Peace be unto thee. Be strong, be strong. And then when he had spoken unto me, I was strengthened, and said, Let my Lord speak, for thou hast strengthened me. Then said he, Knowest thou wherefore I come unto thee? And now will I return to fight with the prince of Persia, and when I am gone forth, lo, the prince of Grecia shall come. But I will show thee that which is noted in the scripture of truth, and there is none that holdeth with me in these things, but Michael your prince. Okay, so what we're seeing is a mighty warfare in the spirit realm. And in the spirit realm warfare, even though Daniel was praying, fasting, supplicating before the Lord, these angels, even Gabriel, was trying to get down to explain to him some things which really are being set up in chapter 11, which is a dramatic and intense chapter of the Bible, which we'll get into next time. But you'll see how the principalities and powers in the spirit realm work, and they fight and they battle. And Michael, the archangel, had to fight, and Gabriel had to fight. And if you notice, there's principalities of the Persian Empire, there's principalities of the Grecian empires, and you notice these empires are not godly empires. So there are certain satanic powers over these geographic regions that do fight against the things of God, do fight. I'm sure they didn't want this message getting to Daniel. I'm sure the devil, Satan himself, who controls all these principalities and powers, did not want this end-time message to get to Daniel, because it would set up all the kingdoms, all the peoples to follow, even up to when you and I live, that we would have understanding and revelation that could get written down. And I'm sure the devil is trying to fight the rest of Daniel being written, because he'd already taken some pretty big lumps and some pretty big hits in chapter 7 and 8 and chapter 2, where God had revealed a lot of these end-time kingdom things. So this is why there's such fighting, because it was an intense battle. Because just think of it, these end-time books, like chapter 11 and chapter 12 that are coming up, that speak more and more of the Antichrist kingdom, gives us keys of who he is, when he's going to come, and what God's going to do, and where the saints, you and I, where we fit into this end-time scenario. What is our authority? What is our responsibility? All these things are talked about in chapter 11 and chapter 12 as we go for the home stretch in Daniel. And I'm sure that's why these principalities were fighting in chapter 10 so much and so intensely, because they didn't want this end-time message to come. But the archangel Michael is a lot stronger than those demonic devils, and he was able to bind and deal with it, so the messenger angel could get a breakthrough and get this message to Daniel. So that sets us up for some awesome homestretch finish. And chapter 11, as I've mentioned before, is probably one of the most difficult, intense chapters in the Bible to comprehend. But once you unlock its secrets and understand it, it's going to bring some great knowledge and wisdom, and it's fun and exciting. And it gives some great promises for the saints of God towards these end times. And chapter 12 is kind of a summary of it all. And so look forward to talking to you guys next time. We're out of time. Blessings. See you next time. We have come to the end of another Captain Mike show. Thank you for joining us. If you like this teaching, please consider donating by clicking on the PayPal link in the description area of this video. 1/3 of all donations go to Elisha Revolution Ministry in San Diego, California, for helping feed people in need in Africa and Pakistan. It's a very strong evangelistic and healing ministry that has been experiencing an ongoing 4-night-a-week revival for over 4 years now. If you would like to contact me directly, you may email me at thecaptainmikeshow@yahoo.com. Remember Acts 4:12, neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved, speaking of Jesus Christ. And also, please remember John 14:6. Jesus say unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh to the Father but by me. Blessings to all of you, and until next time, be seeing you.
Be seeing you.